Okay, so we're back, and Professor Brandon, I realized that at the very end of my presentation, I think I said something like the scripts can be um, adapted from things we were writing. I really meant to say stories we were already reading. I think that's maybe more applicable for teachers. But at any rate, the best scripts, of course, are those that are rich in dialogue and are compelling reads for students. So we want to pick things that we think that is going to be a fun script, an interesting script for students to practice reading, that they can engage in the voices of the characters, etc. The script should be written at the instructional reading levels of the students. So you can group your students in groups based on their reading levels sometimes, or maybe with a partner who is at just higher reading level than them to support them. You can also get really great scripts that are pre-written and or that we write ourselves that are designed with roles written at various reading levels. So in this way, your heterogeneous groups of students can work together while each student is practicing at their own instructional reading level. So how do we implement this? What does it really look like? So here's just one example of a way that a Reader's Theater lesson could be implemented in over the course of a week. So this is approximately 20 to 30 minutes a day, and feel free to, deviate from this in any way that makes sense in your classroom. But typically, here's one way you could do it. So on Mondays, the teacher might introduce the activity. The teacher might read the script out loud, or perhaps the text itself that the script is based on, and model appropriate fluency and expression, and really explicitly teach those kids what you're doing and why. The teacher can then lead a discussion to support the student's background knowledge and develop comprehension. You can see down here I include identifying, defining new vocabulary. So these are all things that good teachers are doing all the time when they're introducing new stories. So this is, of course, really great for Reader's Theater as well. The teacher can really add to that, though, by discussing how the characters are feeling and how they might sound as they speak based on those feelings. So you can see how we can really dive into comprehension and what is the author really trying to tell us about what's going on with this character. And then on Monday, the students can practice reading the script out loud to their reading buddies or a small group. And typically on a Monday, this might mean that the students are reading all of the parts. They're just practicing reading the whole script. You've already modeled it for them. On Tuesday, the students might then be able to choose their roles or choose maybe from a select pool of roles that you've given them based on their reading levels. The students can practice reading their roles with their reading partners with explicit teaching and expectations set from the teacher about exactly what you're going to be looking for, because while the students are doing this reading, the teacher can be coming around and be giving explicit fluency feedback to their students. So I teach a class usually between 28 and 35 students, so I know I could never get around to all of my students in a 20 to 30 minute practice session like that. So I wrote a little tip here that you might decide to have maybe half the class get their feedback on Tuesday and mark that down, and then meet with the second half on Wednesday, because we can see on Wednesday, again, they're going to be meeting and they're going to be practicing their scripts, but on Wednesday, the difference might be instead of just being with their one partner, they might be able to get together with their whole group. And of course, then the teacher is again going around and giving explicit feedback to their students. On Thursday, the students might practice reading their scripts as a group again, and really this time they're polishing it because they're going to be preparing for Friday's performance, which would be the next day. And the teacher, of course, is still monitoring and still giving feedback to students. And if it were me, I'd probably be giving extra attention to those kids that I noticed on Wednesday and Tuesday that I'd given feedback to, and I want to see on Thursday, are they actually implementing some of those ideas? Are they changing their reading? Do they need support with anything? And on Friday, Friday is the grand finale, and really sets the purpose for all of this practice in the whole week, where the students will actually perform their readers theater performance. And there's a variety of ways you could do this. It could be for your class. It could be a culminating performance where parents are invited. It could be maybe you're doing it with your buddies, your cross-age buddies, or something like that. And here's where the teacher could be doing the final reading fluency evaluation for each student. So here are just some tips for effective practice. Research has found that rereading a text 3 to 4 times provides the ideal amount of practice to develop fluency. So the good news is that this happens naturally in the weekly readers theater practice, right? They heard it on Monday, they got to practice it on Monday after that, and on Tuesday, and on Wednesday, and then their 4th time would be their final read on Friday. The students benefit the most if they're encouraged to read until they have met a rate and accuracy criterion rather than simply a number of readings, right? So instead of them thinking that the goal is practice 2 times with your partner and then move on when they're practicing, it's really like practice until you and your partner agree that you sound like this, that you're this accurate. And you'll see on the next page, I have a little grading rubric that's pretty student friendly. You can adapt it for your grade level, that the students themselves can be holding and checking off with their partners or with their group mates as you're also going around and checking for these same criteria. So students should know exactly what it means to read fluently. So there you go with that rubric. And the practice is most effective when students practice in the presence of an adult and not only a peer. So please do not make it so it's only their peer checking them off. They really need an adult to give them feedback and to really be that great listener that they deserve as they're practicing. So definitely the key here is that the teacher is making time to provide feedback to their students. And one way to ensure extra practice with adults is that scripts can be sent home and they can be read to an adult as homework. Oh, sorry. That was an example of the rubric, and Professor Brandon, we could go over all of this and talk about how they could change it. So here's a video that provides an example of how one teacher implemented readers theater in his 2nd grade classroom. So he did an interesting thing where he really took that sort of 5-day, 5-step model that we just talked about, and for the purpose of this video, it looks like he's condensed it into 1 day, but he kind of in his video shows you, here's what I would do on day 1 and day 2 and day 3 and day 4. So I'd like you to watch the video. And Professor Brandon, at this point, I'd probably hand out some papers that have these 2 questions with room to write, right? And I would like you to watch the video and afterwards take some time to just jot down some notes about the components of effective readers theater and fluency building practice that you noticed in the video. So draw on what we've talked about today in our presentation. What did you see in the video that was effective, that we've talked about? This is an effective way to implement readers theater. And number 2, this lesson or series of lessons is not the most ideal, so I'd also like you to look at it with a critical lens and respond about how could the teacher improve this lesson sequence to ensure high quality reading practice for all of his students. So Professor Brandon, maybe you'll watch the video and then you'll see that this is a great example of someone who's implemented a lot of those steps, right? They've got like the Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, but I can see that this teacher perhaps has not set things up so that all students are successful. You can see there's one kid at one point that's just sort of staring off into space and looks a little frustrated. So I'm hoping that our teachers will come together and instruction leads will come together and come up with some pair share strategies and some scaffolding strategies and classroom management strategies for how we could make this even more effective. And that's really the end of my session with them, Professor Brandon, and I'm just going to kind of leave them with this. Ideally, if it was me, really, as the reading specialist, I would have a bunch of these printed out at different grade levels already. I know for myself as a teacher, I love to learn things, and I love it when things are then easily accessible, at least to start me off for the next week, so I don't have to go search for these things on my own time on the weekend. So I would probably have some of these printed off as examples for teachers to choose from, and then also give them this so that once they're really engaged and interested in Reader's Theater, then they have a bunch of resources. And here are all of our references. So I hope you enjoyed my presentation, and I would look forward to hearing your feedback about it. Thank you. Bye-bye.